The relentless exclusive, an interview with one of the teachers from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. The location of the tragic and horrific shooting that left 17 people dead and many questions left unanswered. Now, I shared some of this interview with you just yesterday. Now, tonight, I want to focus on one of the most important questions. What could have prevented this? Now, in terms of the murderer himself, there have been questions surrounding the Broward County Sheriff and his department's handling of what was clearly a disturbed former student. Red flags surrounded him, and all of the tips that the deputies, the police, the FBI received went uninvestigated with deadly consequences. But there were more missteps. According to this teacher from the high school, the principal bears some responsibility as well after he ignored a threat assessment conducted just months before the deadly rampage. The details of that report and what was done, and more importantly, not done, were the topics that this teacher wanted to discuss with me in this explosive and exclusive interview. This teacher started by telling me about the former Secret Service agent that was hired to conduct a security threat assessment here at the school. Watch.
It was performed about 2 months ahead, actually. So it was performed in December, and then the shooting was in February.
Wow. And you said that with this, there was someone that worked with Secret Service or had affiliations with Secret Service that was able to come into the school, and to describe that a little bit for us, was able to come into the school and basically just show how much access they had with the current security protocols in place.
That's absolutely right. This was a career Secret Service agent who had recently retired, and he was known to, certain members of our staff at school because he had children that attended Stoneman Douglas. So the security committee contacted him and asked if he would be willing to come on campus and do a threat assessment, and he was absolutely willing to do that. So he came to school one day, sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, never having been accosted by any security staff or the school resource officer, asking, "What's your business? What are you doing here? Identify yourself." And then he was able to get on campus, and he put Post-it notes on the shirts or sleeves of 21 people. And each Post-it note was denoting a casualty if there were a school shooter. And the only reason he stopped at 21 is because he ran out of Post-it notes. Then he made several recommendations when he met with the security team, and one of them was to absolutely tighten up school entrances, that the gates should remain locked at all times, and that no one should be able to even enter the parking lot without being checked in. And as you remember from the other day, another recommendation he made was with the fire alarm. If it went off, don't evacuate students until someone is sent to the location to investigate the reason for the fire alarm before evacuating. And if that one recommendation were followed, then lives would have definitely been saved. A third recommendation he made was that anyone on campus should be able to call a code red. Now, on February 14th, the majority of students and staff on campus had no idea there was an active shooter. And the only reason the teachers and students in the 1200 building knew there was an active shooter is because they heard the shots being fired. There was never a code red called. Okay? So that's a massive failure in itself. What we heard was evacuate the building after the fire alarm went off, so most of the staff and students were running outside, and it's a miracle that more people didn't lose their lives, actually, because he could have been picking off people as they're running around outside. The people that stayed locked in their closets that you've heard about on the news, they stayed locked in their closets because they heard gunshots, not because any code reds were ever called. Okay, so that's a massive failure. He recommended the importance of a clear chain of command, that everyone on campus should know who is in charge at all times, staff members, because, people, as it is, don't really know when the principal is on campus or not. And when he's not on campus, we know who the second in command is, but on that day, it wasn't known. And when the shooting was going on, only certain people had access to the room where the monitor for the surveillance cameras are located, and people were on the radio asking for the principal, Ty Thompson, where's Ty, and he wasn't even on campus that day. So that was something that, should have been different. It would have been easier to access the surveillance cameras. And speaking of which, here's something that many people aren't aware of. Our surveillance cameras on Stoneman Douglas, up until February 14th, and I don't even know if that's been changed yet, no one watches the school surveillance monitor live time. It has only been checked until after the fact. No one is sitting there watching it at all times. And if someone was, then someone would have seen what was going on immediately, and then a code red could have been called. So that's another recommendation that was made. Someone should be monitoring those surveillance cameras at all times, and no one was. Now, Dana, these failures are massive, 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 and these recommendations were made 2 months before the shooting took place. And if even one of them were implemented, undoubtedly lives would have been saved. I'm not saying all lives would have been saved, but at least some of them would have been saved. And, the reason I'm making this information public, Dana, is because, to me, it's infuriating that people aren't marching in the streets demanding accountability for the 17 lives that were lost. No one is. They're marching in the streets for a different issue. And really, there have been failures at multiple levels of government, and no one is demanding accountability for this. And so it is my mission to try to make people aware of the different failures that happened, so maybe more people would be concerned and more people would be demanding that responsibility be taken by the various parties that are responsible for the events on February 14th.
There were a number of different discussions the day that this massacre took place, where certain students and even some of the teachers had described a drill. They thought that this was a drill being done. They had received some kind of notice that there was going to be a drill of this sort performed on campus, and then it turned out to be the real thing. Were you aware of that? Did you receive any kind of notification about a possible drill or anything like that being carried out?
We had had a fire drill earlier that morning, and it had been a rumor around school that we would be having a code red drill in the near future. We didn't know when, but we knew there would be a code red drill at some point in time in the future. The district person in charge of these drills, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Butler, I think his name is Al Butler, he met with the staff on January 12th to discuss emergency types of situations, and he mentioned that the code red drills would be done in the elementary schools before the high schools, because no one shoots up a high school. The school shootings generally, like Sandy Hook, they're going to be done in an elementary school. Well, maybe he forgot about Columbine, I don't know. But it wasn't done at Stoneman Douglas because they were trying to do the code red drills in the elementary schools first, and they would get to us at some point. And we had heard that week that it would be in the near future. We just didn't know when the code red drill was coming.
And you mentioned as well that the principal wasn't there on campus. He didn't leave command if something horrible happened. Were the parents aware of this? I mean, obviously you're speaking out about it, but have other teachers questioned this and asked what happened to that breakdown?
Well, I don't know that there was, a quote-unquote breakdown, but many people weren't aware that he was not there that day. We know who his second-in-command is. We know which assistant principal is the second-in-command, but we weren't aware that he was not there on that day. And we are not aware, generally, when he's not on campus, which happens to be quite frequently.
Do you feel safe in the school now?
Well, I guess the answer to that would be I feel safer than I have in a long time because of the increased police presence that we have. There are Florida highway patrolmen monitoring the entrances and exits to school. There's also BSO deputies, but we know those aren't always the best types of deputies to have because they fall asleep in patrol cars. I don't know if you've heard about that or not since the February 14th. But yes, because of the increased police presence, it is safer than it had been. But, is there ever going to be complete safety? I don't know. I really, really don't.
Right.
And this latest thing with the clear backpacks is, really kind of laughable.
This, when you talk about, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, talking about the clear backpacks, the students at Selma Douglas are up in arms, understandably, about that. It's an invasion of privacy. This isn't really going to prevent anything. All of this stuff that you're hearing, and I agree with it. And I happened to say to one of my classes today, I said, so what you're saying then is that you believe it's wrong to punish the 99.9% of the people that obey the laws for these small, minuscule portion of people who don't. And the savvy students, the really smart ones, got what I was saying. They got the hidden meaning of what I was saying there.
This assessment that was carried out, there was also another assessment that was done specifically on the murderer, the shooter in this tragedy. Were you aware of the trouble that the school was having with that, with that individual? How well known was that? Because apparently the school board was aware of the therapist files, and I'm not quite sure. And I guess I'm asking if you can enlighten me as to how well known was that potential threat.
It wasn't well known to the staff as a whole, and this student was not one of mine. I did not know him, but he, number one, should have been arrested on campus multiple times, and he would have been 18 years old at the time of being arrested. He had brought weapons on campus. He was in multiple fights on campus, but the school district, Superintendent Muncie, and the DSO entered into agreements where most students would not be arrested on schools anymore. We want to keep the criminals in school rather than having them in jail. So there was that issue. Then he should have been Baker acted. The shooter should have been Baker acted, meaning he should have been involuntarily committed. And Deputy Peterson had started the process of doing so, but the following day, when it came time to move forward with the involuntary commitment, he all of a sudden changed his mind. Now, if either one of them had taken place, if he had been arrested, if he had been Baker acted, he never would have been able to buy that AR-15. So again, there's more failures of government that led to the events of February 14th.
Yes, apparently other students didn't feel safe at the school because he had made threats toward them, and teachers had noted his belligerent behavior and assaulting other students as well, assaulting his parent at home. Are you aware of, was the school board made aware, now going back to the threat assessment that was done on the whole school, was the school board made aware of that?
I can't say with 100% certainty. I don't know. I know the principal was made aware of it. Now, whether he took it to the school board and they mixed all the recommendations or whether they stopped with their principal, I can't say for sure. I just know that the assistant principal on the safety committee returned and told the members of the safety committee that we're not going to do these recommendations. So I don't know where it stopped. So it could be with the principal, it could be with the school board.
I'm wondering if the school has a concern about a liability issue, because at this point, from everything that you're saying from this security assessment, I mean, the things that they were highlighting there definitely could have minimized, if not prevented, loss of life. And they weren't implemented. I'm wondering if they're worried about a potential liability issue. From what I've read in reports, one student had already filed suit and included the school in that.
Yes, I understand that student has already filed suit, and if the school isn't worried, they definitely should be. And I will make contact with the student's attorney and let the attorney know this information myself. so he can move forward with it.
What would you like to see happen as a result of this? I know that you want to make this, you want to get this information out there, and parents definitely have a right to know. I think parents at schools across the country should be asking about the security procedures of their children's school. What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see Sheriff Israel lose his job because he has accepted no responsibility whatsoever for anything that happened on February 14th, and he definitely should. I would like to see the school board and Superintendent Runcie be exposed for what they have done with the no arresting policy, because that puts students in other schools in Broward County in danger as well. I would also like to see schools become a lot stricter regarding security measures. You know, yes, it's going to cost money, but aren't people's children's lives worth more money and worth more of an investment? And it can't be, the answer to that can't be no. It should be yes, it should. But to me, you know, all the events and everyone on the bandwagon with the march, and, you know, we have to have all these gun control laws. To me, it's a smokescreen to cover up the real causes of the events on February 14th and the real breakdowns and failures that contributed to loss of life on February 14th. So I want to bring the focus back to accountability and responsibility in order to make schools safer, in order to prevent loss of life moving forward in other schools.
Now, watching this interview, I'm sure that you had the same thoughts that I had while I was conducting it. The massive amount of failures at every level surrounding the shooting are impossible to overstate. Every day, we get new information about another misstep, another missed opportunity, another failure by those tasked with protecting these kids, all by the very government agencies and departments that the gun control lobby swears we should trust with our lives and can trust with our lives. These kids and their parents trusted these groups. They trusted Robert Runcie. They trusted their principal. They trusted Sheriff Scott Israel with their lives. And when they were failed, there was nothing left to protect them.